Damola Okunshaki. Beginning with the front pages of the dailies this morning, I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with insecurity. Gunmen run riot in Abuja, Enugu, Ekiti, Katsina, three others. Bandits kill three, abduct 36 women in Zamfara community. Kidnappers kill 3 of 10 victims in Abuja, raise ransom to 700 million naira. Bandits raid military camp, unleash mayhem on the Katsina community. Kidnappers engage soldiers overrun in Enugu, abduct 4. Gunmen abduct a varsity lecturer in Kebbi. Hoodlums invade and execute steel corps. Poverty, hunger, fueling insecurity in Nigeria, article amends. Governor Sani seeks a time frame to end terrorism. Senator Musa calls for state police. You can see that story on page 5. And here there's a picture showing Deputy Senate President, Senator Jibrin, Senator President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, APC National Chairman Dr. Abdullahi Ganduje, and Ondo State Governor Lucky Ayedatiwa when the President commissioned the Bola Tinubu Drive, Sam Mbakwe International Cargo Airport were rebuilt by Governor Uzodinma yesterday. Now on page 20, cost of doing business to remain high as inflation hits 28.9%. On page 12, Rivers government mom as assembly gets set to screen, confirm 9 resigned commissioners. On page 31, sports, Super Eagles eat gym for battle against Cote d'Ivoire. Stories above the banner on page 24, Uzodima's second term. Imo safe for business, as according to Tinubu. Release all remitted funds to NDDC. Niger Delta stakeholders urge Tinubu. Tinubu commented anti-security orders for fighting oil theft. Lastly, on Vanguard newspaper, credit to government falls 45% to 5.16 trillion naira. You can see that on page 19. Now the nation is leading with Tinubu. Prosperity soon after subsidy removal pains. President Obasanjo, governors, senators honor Uzodinma Act as second inauguration. You can see that story on page 2. NNPCL opens bid to privatize Port Harcourt refinery. Firm gets general eye. You can see that inside the nation. Sanwo-Olu signs a record 2.267 trillion naira 2024 estimate. Hoodlum sees body at exit. You can see that on page 6. And the stories above the banner. Terrorist bandits on the rampage. Mansour Akadriya must pay 60 million naira to save daughters. DSS takes over NPC headquarters over abduction of staff's kids. Abuja 10 kidnappers kill 3. Raise ransom to 700 million naira. First Lady urges security agencies to up their game. You can see that on page 4. Now the Guardian. Here we have a 2024 oil production. Federal government strained to meet 650 million barrels targets over crude-backed loans. You can see that on page 6. On page 3, 7 richest African wealthier than the poorest half of continent population. NNPCL shops for net worth investors to manage Port Harcourt refinery. You can see that on page 3. Federal government's 35,000 naira wage award remains till new minimum wage, NLC declares. Minister orders disclose immunities. You can see that on page 5. And on page 4, Tinubu lead armed forces Remembrance Day celebration. On page 6, Nigeria's inflation ends 2023 at 28.9% as naira anxiety worsens outlook. Now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Punch is dealing with abduction epidemic spreads nationwide. Kidnappers move from expressway to Lagos, Ogun, Abuja city centers. Kidnappers kill 2 young victims, demand 700 million naira ransom for 9 others. You can see that on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7. Now on page 30, 69 protesters killed, 189 journalists arrested under Buhari. That's according to reports. And kidnapping, BK fiddles with Rivers politics while Abuja burns. Sanwo-Olu promises more projects with 2 trillion naira budget. You can see that on page 6. And stories above the banner. 14 states have spent 21 billion naira on foreign troops despite zero FDI. Lastly, on the Punch newspaper, OPS blames struggling naira for highest inflation in 21 years. You can see that on page 21 of the Punch newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after the break for the analysis. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today the News on Vanguard Live. My name is Damola Okunshakin. Joining us to analyze the front pages of the dailies this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He's the publisher of Ilepeji Today, Lekki Today, and Ikeja GRA Today. Good morning, Mr. Dayo.
Good morning, Damola. Good morning to all our viewers.
Yes, thank you for joining us. Now let's move straight to the front pages of the dailies. Terrorists, bandits, and criminals of all those took their inglorious activities in the country to a new dimension in the last 48 hours, wrecking mayhem in 6 states and the Federal Capital Territory, that's FCT, Abuja. And this has left no fewer than 6 persons dead, 60 persons kidnapped, a corpse stolen, and goods worth millions of naira also stolen. Now, the only zone that was not affected is South. What's your take on this?
Well, this is pure criminality that is just gone completely haywire, and I think the primary reason behind it is that it's not an economic incentive, because people are realizing that they can make a lot of money from doing this and they can get away with it, and the risk is low. First of all, it seems like the security architecture is not doing enough to apprehend these people, so they're getting bolder and bolder and bolder because they see themselves getting away with these atrocities all the time. I mean, when there is no penalty or no consequence or there is no deterrent to inhibit bad behavior, it will continue to grow and become more rampant, and that's what's happening here. This is not anything about ethnicity or religion or an ideology or whatever may have started this whole thing years ago. Now it is simply purely an economic motive, which means making money. And you can see from the stories that are coming out recently, you can see the amounts of ransom that has been paid. I mean, they are so bold now and with such impunity that they ask you for 60 million, you beg and you say, oh, you only have 30 million, and then they kill one of the hostages and they increase the amount to 100 million. They say, we are not taking your 30 million, we don't want that. We want 100 million. So they're really bold now, and they are starting to be really reckless with human life, and they don't really care, and they are callous. And this is all about because of money. You now start asking yourself, why is it all of a sudden now in Abuja? Why is it moving to the cities? Because in the past, kidnapping was in the hinterlands. It was on the expressways, in the suburbs, in the hinterland. Now it's moving. You mentioned the number of states, Lagos State, Ogun State, especially Abuja, the FCT. And I ask myself, why Abuja of all places? And I guess because one would expect Abuja, which is the seat of the government, to be the safest place in the country. That's where the seat of government is highly protected. There's DSS, there's army formations, the Inspector General is based there. You would expect Abuja to be the most fortified and safest location in the entire country. Matter of fact, anytime there's a siege on any community, usually where you run to seek refuge is the capital, because that's supposed to be the safest place. Yet now Abuja seems to be the place that's most targeted, and you ask yourself why. And I wonder, could it have to do with the opulent and lavish display of convoys of jeeps and legislators and the people in the administration living large, that people are thinking that there's so much money to be had in Abuja that this might be the place where we can get the most reward for this kind of terroristic activity? Because in Abuja, every layman administrator has a convoy, has police escort, has jeeps, has all this. And so when people are seeing these lavish convoys going, they believe there's a lot of money in this place, and so we can do this thing here, get reward with little risk. The problem for me, I ask, is what's the police doing? What's the DSS doing? What's the army doing? These terrorists, they're not ghosts. They're not phantoms who just miraculously appear and disappear. They're human beings, and they live amongst us. They have to, so they can't have gone to dig a hole in the ground and be living there. They have to live within communities. So how come they've not been able to be apprehended, or we don't hear of arrests? We don't hear of. So it's really worrisome, honestly. Really, really worrisome.
All right. some have actually come out to say that for the case of Nabiba that was killed,
Yes.
they've come out to say they're going to donate some particular amount of money. Someone even said he's going to donate 20 million naira. Now, do you think this is actually nice? You're saying they're going to donate this money because it seems to be giving them more wings to come out.
Well, of course, every government's official positions that we don't negotiate with terrorists, we don't pay ransom. What we will do is we will interdict these people, we will investigate, we will find them, and we will smoke them out. So you will not officially hear any government talking about paying ransom or talking about negotiating, but individual families, they're the ones who are strained and in emotional trauma behind their loved ones being in captivity. So the way it usually works is you will hear that families are negotiating. In fact, I heard of one case where the family went to negotiate with the terrorists, went to take the money to the terrorists, and something happened, and then they went to the police, and the police said, Shabi, you start talking to them already, go and sort it out yourself, now you're not interested. So officially, it is not a thing that any government will do to openly negotiate or openly pay ransom, but it's the families who see that perhaps the only way to get their loved one back is to pay the ransom. It's the families that generally will start running around. Now, the person I heard raised money for the family of Nabiha is an ex-government official, Isa Pantami, who was a former minister for communications under the past administration. I understand that he was the one who rallied around some friends and said a friend of his, he managed to convince a friend of his to put up 50 million naira towards the ransom so that the other 4 sisters and their father would be released and not be killed like the one daughter was killed. So he's not officially in the administration. He made that move as a private citizen. So I'm not sure that you will really hear any official in the administration say that they're going to put money towards a ransom, because that undermines all the efforts to fight, combat, and interdict this scourge. So you don't want to encourage the bandits by making them believe that as long as we've got somebody, people in the government will raise the money. Because you see, that's what it does. Each time they get money, it emboldens them. Each time they're giving money in exchange for somebody, it emboldens them. That's why they are increasing the amount of ransom, and they are able to be arrogant and say, no, we don't want 30. If you can't pay 100 million, your people can go and we'll do whatever we want with the hostages. So there's impunity involved now. There's arrogance, and they have a devil-may-care attitude to it now, because they see they can get away with it, and all they have to do is have a hostage, and they can basically write their own check as to what they want to do.
All right. Right from the former president's administration, people complained about the security leaders, that they should change the security leaders, and this might help a little. And now they changed it, and now this present administration also brought in their own security leaders, and now we're still experiencing this. So is this about the security officials, or there are some measures that they need to take that they are not taking?
Well, first, let's remember that the immediate past administration, the head of it was a military man, and part of the reason we brought him into office in 2015 was we believe that as a strong man in the military, he would eliminate all security problems. Well, it defied him for 8 years. He couldn't solve it, and it even got worse. Well, now we've got a civilian in office who knows nothing about warfare and military operations. What hope do we have? So I look at it and I ask myself, well, that's not to say that no civilian can tackle it, but what I'm saying is I balance the two, and I look at it and I think that if a military man couldn't solve it, to what extent can a civilian solve it? So I think the issue is much deeper than just confrontation, throw weapons at it or throw money at it. I think it's deeper than that. Number one, I wonder why, when the UAE gave us the names of 400 sponsors of terrorism under the immediate past administration, those people have not been brought to book. Right? These are some of the ways that we can begin to solve this problem, is that we have to go after the money, we have to go after the sponsors. And he gave the Buhari administration a list of 400 terrorism financiers that he has identified. Up to tomorrow, we never heard anything. I heard a report which said, the government is working on it, but for national security reasons, they are doing it quietly. They can at least they should tell us that, okay, out of the 400, we've investigated 200, we've arrested 100, we are going through trial, even if we can't tell you their names. But those 400, that was very important intelligence that could have helped us to begin to, because like I said, I don't think it's something you can approach on the surface and say, okay, this is the enemy, we are the army, let's go and bomb them. I think it's a lot deeper than that. And I've always said, follow the money. So government needs to look back at that list and begin to try to see how to go after the sponsors of terrorism. Then I also think the morale of the army is low. Our servicemen, I think their morale is low. I don't think they're sufficiently motivated. I saw a heartbreaking story of some veterans who fought all the way back in the Civil War who have not received their compensation up to today. Old men in poverty who served the country, who laid their lives down on the line for the country. It particularly poignant that yesterday was Armed Forces Remembrance Day, and that on that day we were celebrating our heroes who laid their lives down on the line so that we may be free, so that we may have democracy, so that we can go about our lives unhindered. The day we are celebrating them is also the day that all kinds of acts of insecurity occur all over the country. It's a cosmic message, because the alignment is uncanny, that on the day of such a memorial is the day when terrorism and insecurity is unleashed all across the country. So we look at it and say, what's the deeper message here? It simply is that, you know, the people who are the ones on the front line of fighting this war need to be sufficiently motivated. I don't think it's good enough that their emoluments are not paid, that their hazard pay is not paid, when they die on duty, the insurance, their families are not looked after, they live in squalor, their emoluments. So without a doubt, even apart from insufficient motivation, some of them may even be assisting the terrorists for financial gain because they're not well remunerated enough. I also have it on good authority that some of the so-called repentant bandits that were brought in and forgiven have been recruited into the military. So who knows, they might be colluding with some of these terrorists from the inside, which worsens our situation exponentially. So a lot needs to be done, a lot more, and I pray this administration has the political will to do what is necessary.
Yes, another issue Nigeria is facing now is the inflation. Now, the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association (NECA), senior staff of banks, insurance, and financial institutions, that's ASS, BIFI, and financial analysts, they've expressed concern at the rising inflation rates. They noted that the cost of doing business in the country now would remain high, and they blamed the situation on the scarcity of foreign exchange, forex insecurity, among other economic issues. What's your take on this?
It doesn't spell well. I mean, already as it is, we're already groaning under the yoke of expensive everything, from fuel to food. Even rents are going up, transportation is up, and of course salaries are not keeping pace, even though the federal government has said it's going to increase wages of federal workers and things like that. But no matter what they increase it to, it still can't meet up with the cost of living. Well, I'm glad the president in his new address said he would look at everybody should earn a living wage. What that means, we don't know yet. But inflation is a worrisome trend, because what it means simply is that the amount of money in your pocket, no matter how much it is, will not be enough to buy what you need to have for survival. So if you had 100 naira in your pocket last week, or the 100 naira to buy last week, you can't buy it again this week. It's buying less. So perhaps the rice and beans you bought for lunch last week was 500 naira. By the time you go back there this week, right, you get half for that same 500 naira. You get half of the same quantity, which can't fill you up. So inflation has a deleterious effect on the entire economy, the entire populace, and for NECA to be saying that the outlook is poor, the future, that the outlook for inflation is poor. What they're saying is it's not going to reduce, rather it's going to increase in the times coming because of various factors, insecurity, lack of forex. It also goes down to the fact that the fundamentals of the economy are not right yet. I know this government has tried to do reforms and economic reforms and things, but the fundamentals are not right. Number one, we don't have electricity, adequate electricity, so we can't manufacture. If we can't manufacture, we can't export. If we can't export, we can't earn foreign exchange. If we can't earn foreign exchange, then we can't buy the things we need to buy cheaply, because we will source the foreign exchange in the parallel market where it's very expensive. So it's a domino effect. So many things are combining to cause this inflation. And what Mecca is saying is that it doesn't see any hope to bring inflation down based on those inadequacies of the fundamentals. So even if we resolve power tomorrow, let's say Siemens comes on board and resolves power tomorrow, before they eventually get the whole country hooked up and running on power, then before we set up manufacturing plants, before we employ people, train them, before we start producing items, before we get it good enough to export, several years. It's not an overnight project. So basically, I think the primary solution first and foremost should be localization of production. So let's start with food. Let's make sure we grow what we eat. So we need to encourage farming. Let's grow all, so that we don't have to import, even rice. We don't have to bring anything in. We have the land where we can cultivate enough food to feed 220 million people. If we can feed ourselves without importing any food at all, that's number one solution towards bringing down inflation, towards making us self-sustaining when you start growing our own food. But agriculture, well, the government pays lip service to, we want to diversify the economy, anchor borrowers program, farmers come and borrow money, which of course was fraught with all kinds of corruption and inefficiency. So how we encourage more people to go into farming is something government must really focus on, because we need to feed ourselves first.
All right, let's move on now. Nigeria may fail to produce about 138 million barrels of crude oil, worth $10.73 billion in 2024, and even has President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is set to set a Nigeria 28 trillion naira 2024 budget on an unrealistic oil and gas outlook that has consistently failed in the last 10 years.
But this is all bad news. It's not again, some people say all news that comes out is bad news anyway, that all the good news is not reported. But yeah, the thing about it is that we've borrowed money against our oil.
Yeah.
Even recently, we took 3 billion from Afrexim Bank. That requires, I think, 90,000 barrels of collateralized by 90,000 barrels of oil per day. Now, OPEC has given us a quota, I think it's 1.something million barrels. We've not fulfilled that quota. We have improved our daily, how much oil we bring up from the ground on a daily basis. I think as far back as a few years ago, it was only 900,000 per day. I think now we're at 1.2 million, but I think OPEC has given us somewhere around 1.5 or 1.6, which we are not meeting up to yet. Why are we not meeting to? There's militancy in the Niger Delta, which has been reduced. There's oil theft, which is a big issue. Vandalization of oil pipes and oil theft. If you saw in the news a few days ago, Tantita Security apprehended a vessel that had several 100,000 barrels of oil that were suspected to have been stolen. So there's still a lot of oil theft going on in the Niger Delta, which reduces the amount of oil that we have available to sell. So what that report is saying basically is that when you juxtapose what we are able to pump on a daily basis versus what we have borrowed against in the future, because you know what we do when we borrow money, right? We pledge barrels of oil that we've not yet pulled up. It's called forward purchase. Barrels of oil, and I mean the lender will already have gone to do a seismic and geological surveys and make sure there's plenty of oil underground and say, okay, yeah, so you can give us this oil whenever you bring it up. We'll lend you the money now. When you bring the oil up, you pay us your oil back. What that report is saying basically is that we have mortgaged so much of the oil that we have not yet brought up, that by the time we bring it up and we pay all the people we owe, right, what is left will not be able to meet our needs because we are not able to lift the amount we should be able to lift because there's issues. And they are even saying that President Tinubu's 2024 budget is based on 1.7 million barrels per day, which they're saying is unrealistic. We're not going to pull that up. Even if OPEC has given us that quota, there are too many constraints about being able to lift that kind of quantity out of the ground. So that report essentially is a warning that there is going to be a deficit between our oil revenue and the debt we owe. That the people we need to pay in oil in the future, by the time they take theirs out, what is left for us won't be able to meet up the budget, won't be able to cover our needs. So it's a warning. First of all, of course, The warning is stop borrowing. Or borrow less. Stop borrowing. I've always had this thing that, look, we don't have an expense problem, we have a revenue problem. We're not making enough money. A lot of people know Nigeria is rich, we have a lot of oil. No. We have oil, we have gas, we do, but we're not earning enough from those things to meet our needs because we're not drawing enough. And secondly, we borrowed so much against it down the future. Many years we borrowed that we have to keep paying back. So we've got an issue. So if we are really complaining about inflation, we're really complaining about low wages, what we're not saying is that even the money we make from oil sales, after we pay our outstandings that we owe, won't be enough to fund the budget, won't be enough to meet our needs. That's the problem.
All right, let's quickly end this. I want you to just talk about what do you think about Nigeria's popular theme for 2024? No bill for anybody.
Yes, that slogan has gone viral now and it's on the lips of everybody, but I think it's slightly misunderstood. For me, what that slogan is basically saying is that be the best you can be. You as an individual. Don't let anybody hold you back or discourage you from aspiring to greater heights. Don't let anything get in your way. Overcome the hurdles. Subdue your challenges. Just give it your all in this year to be the best you can be and to achieve. That's what I think. Don't allow anything or anybody to stand in your way. Oh, I misinterpreted it to mean social media and I guess Gen Z. I've misconstrued it, whether intentionally or inadvertently. I've misconstrued it to mean don't allow anyone to cheat you, to get over on top of you, stop anybody from taking advantage of you. If it means slap my face, I slap yours back, whatever the case, don't take no nonsense from anybody. But I don't interpret. I choose to say from a more positive light that it is actually a motivational slogan and that we should see it as such.
All right, let's end this with Mr. and Mrs. And the first person speaking today is Mrs. Mrs. One of these days I will shock you with my cookings. And Mr. replies, I will only be shocked when you prepare eel pepper soup. And Mrs. What's an eel? And Mr. says the type of fish that produces electricity.
Yes, it produces electricity.
Yes.
So that's why it says it will shock you because an eel produces electricity. Touch it shocks you. So that's why I had to play on one. Nice one.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer, for joining us this morning.
My pleasure always.
Yes, and this is what we have to draw the curtain. Do what to like and follow us on all our social media platforms showing on your screen, and visit our website www.vanguardngr.com to get more of our top stories. My name is Daniela Okunshaki. Have a lovely Tuesday.